If you clicked on this video, you probably wonder the same thing I do. Who's going to come out of the Eastern Conference this year in the NBA? We got no idea. Currently sitting, there's only 2 teams in the Eastern Conference with a positive record of teams 500 or better. That would be the Boston Celtics and the Detroit Pistons, and the one behind them is Orlando, who is 500 against teams 500 or better. For the season, the betting odd favorites, a couple of them, were Cleveland. The Knicks were in there. I believe the Hawks were in there because of their offseason and their spending and such like that and the moves that they made. Also in there were Orlando and a little bit of Boston love, not a ton. But overall, it was not a very well-painted picture before the season of who's going to come out of this East. Now that we're at the midway point, I think we can all agree that Detroit should be the top of the list, at the top of the food chain in the Eastern Conference. They are running the conference right now. Like I said, there are currently only 2 teams in the East with a positive record against teams 500 or better. And the Pistons are 14-4 in those games, while the Celtics are 13-12. You heard that right. Against teams 500 or better, the Detroit Pistons are 14-4. This is a team that a lot of people thought were frauds or fluke coming into the season and when they started off really hot. They've proven continually this season that this wasn't a hot start. This wasn't just a quick flash in the pan. This is consistent play with great leadership at the top, and we'll talk about them even more in depth in a minute. Like I said, there's only 2 teams with a positive record against teams 500 or better in the Eastern Conference. In the Western Conference, double that, there's 4 teams with a positive record against teams 500 or better. So it just goes to show you that the crop in the West is a little bit deeper than the crop of contenders in the Eastern Conference. In this video, I'd like to talk about the top 4 teams in the East. Sorry to Orlando, sorry to Philadelphia. You guys are trying to fight your way out of a paper bag right now, and I don't want to get in your way, so I'll just let them do what they got to do. We're going to start off with the Detroit Pistons because, like I said, they are the leader in the clubhouse right now, so rightfully so, they get their shine first. They are the best team in the East, undoubtedly, right now, but they are not unbeatable. Obviously, it starts with the head of the table, Cade Cunningham. But after that, it starts to kind of fall off a little bit. I wholeheartedly believe this season that Cade Cunningham is the best point guard in the East. I know Jalen Brunson has a stake. I know Tyrese Maxey has a stake. I think Cade Cunningham should be, again, the leader in the clubhouse for that. He's averaging 26, 10, and 6 this season. All the while, he's averaging less turnovers per game than last season. Cade Cunningham is having an incredible year. And then, right behind him is his next man in charge, or his second highest scoring threat. That's Jalen Duren, who's averaging 18 and 11 with 2 stocks per game. 18 points per game for Jalen Duren is a lot higher than I think anyone thought he would be at this point this season. As a team, they are first in blocks and steals per game. It really starts in the defensive end for them. They're 3rd in total rebounds and 4th in offensive rebounding. They close possessions and they extend them on the offensive end. They're a very good team down low. They're a team that's not short on athletes. You think about it. Their 2 big men are Duren and Stewart, who are both undersized bigs that are strong and can still move on the perimeter. Their best defenders are probably Ausar Thompson, who's one of the most athletic players in the NBA. Period. End of statement. Javonte Green's in the mix, who's having a great year for them as well. He's a super athlete, just like Ausar Thompson is. So they're not short on athletes and length. They're 3rd in opponent points per game. They're 2nd in opponent turnovers per game, meaning they force the 2nd most turnovers per game in the NBA. They have the lowest opponent assist per game number, meaning opponents aren't getting assists on them. They're creating a lot of isolation scoring, and that's kind of what they want because they have super great defenders. They limit offensive movement and they try and steer your offense into being a lot slower than you want it to be. They're also 9th in opponent 3-point percentage and 2nd in opponent field goal percentage, meaning they hold their opponents to the 2nd worst field goal percentage of any team in the league. They're an all-around elite defense with multiple defenders on their team that are versatile and can go out on the perimeter. Even Duncan Robinson has shown some defending chops like he did against the Celtics the other night. Guys have gone there and become very competitive and very competent defenders, team defenders even as well. Like I said, they're an elite rebounding team. It helps when your point guard is 6'7", so that helps automatically, but you also have 2 gigantic men in the front court, Stewart and Duren, who are very sure-handed grabbing rebounds and set some very firm box outs. Those guys are menaces down low. Like I said, though, they are the best team in the East, undoubtedly, but they are not an unbeatable team. There's some holes in this Pistons roster, and there's some holes in the way that they play that could really be exploited by a lot of teams in the playoffs. For instance, they're bottom 10 in three-point shooting. They're 29th in free throw percentage. That's a big one that's going to hurt them in the playoffs, is when you can't make free throws consistently. Average 16 turnovers per game as a team. That is the second worst in the NBA. That ranks 29th. They're 30th in fouls per game because of their aggressiveness on defense and the fact that they want to get up into you and body you and show a body on a lot of your players. This is a team that you're going to feel. And of course, the referees are going to get on them about that too because, well, it's basketball. It's not that much of a contact sport. It's not football. But I do believe that second worst free throw percentage in the NBA is something that's probably going to hurt them come playoff time. If you can't consistently make a free throw, that's going to be troublesome down the stretch, leaving points on the board like that. Like I said before, outside of Cade Cunningham, they do have some limited contributors and creators. I mean, they rely heavily on Tobias Harris, Karis LeVert, Jaden Ivey. At times this season, Dennis Jenkins has really become a ball handler for them. Their second leading scorer is Duren, but after that, I believe it is Tobias Harris at like 13 or 14 a game. It's not bad, don't get me wrong, but this isn't a team with a ton of perimeter playmakers. If anything, I think they could still go for another point guard at the deadline, which makes them kind of more dangerous, the fact that they can add at the deadline, but they haven't yet. And if this roster stays the same, like I said, there's some worries about their roster. Against Boston, you'll notice that they led by 8 at halftime against the Celtics, and then they started the fourth quarter up 2. Why? Because they're 22nd in third quarter scoring. This is a team that has a history of coming out flat out of the locker room. They're not a perfect team. They are the best team in the East, but they are beatable. They leave points on the board at all times with their free throw rate. They aren't a great three-point shooting team either, so if you can outshoot them, you're definitely going to beat them. No offense, but 3 always beats 2. But before we're done talking about the Pistons, I will add that this is not a fraudulent team. I don't want to paint the picture that this is some bad team masquerading as an elite team. No, this is a really, really good team that's looking like a really, really good team. I'm just pointing out that there are some things that you could point at and say, well, I don't know how much I believe in that come playoff time, specifically the free throws and the three-point shooting. But what they do have is a defense that travels, and on top of that, elite rebounding that helps them get second chance points. So the way I'll end it is by saying far from fraudulent, far from impervious. That's how I'm going to end the discussion about the Pistons. Like I said, really good team, just a couple of holes in the boat, I'll say. The second seed in the East is currently the Boston Celtics. Now, they've looked all right this season considering what the expectations were, and a lot of it starts with their best player, Jaylen Brown. He's averaging about 30 points per game with 6.5 rebounds and 5 assists per game. He's having a career season without Jason Tatum, of course. Behind Jaylen Brown, you then have a three-headed snake of scoring guards, whether it's Peyton Pritchard or Derek White or Anthony Simons. One of them will probably get hot on a nightly basis. The Celtics are a little bit different than the Detroit Pistons. The Pistons are a young team, which means they like to get out and run on the break as well. The Celtics are not like that. They're a low turnover, high volume isolation team, and they're of course relying on three-point shooting, but they also have the slowest pace in the NBA. This is a team that really wants to steer the wheel for you. They want to drive the bus for you, and they want to direct the game how they want to play it. Currently, they have the second best offensive rating in basketball, and their third in net rating overall in the league. They have the second lowest turnover rate in the NBA as well. Like I said, they have the killer whale offense that Joe Mazzulla loves and dies by. It is that you work a switch to get the opposing team's worst defender on your best player, and then from there, it's just go to work, barbecue chicken in isolation. The Celtics haven't really stopped playing how they did when Tatum was active. Sure, they're a little bit slower than last season for sure, but at the same time, they're still high isolation, low turnover. That's exactly what they need to be to win night in and night out. I will add, with the turnovers, sometimes they struggle with more physical teams. You saw Detroit turn them over more because they got into their body more. Celtics are 7th in three-point percentage and 6th in two-point shooting. They're 2nd in threes attempted and 2nd in threes made per game. It's a Joe Mazzulla system. It's bombs away at all times. Don't be afraid to take a three. Don't shy away from taking a three. Joe Mazzulla will applaud you for taking a three. Not a ton of drive and kick, but Jaylen Brown's ability to get into the mid-range has really helped them find the open three-point shooters. He attracts a double just about any time he gets to the free throw line because it's damn near automatic anytime he gets close to the free throw line. So they have to send 2, and that allows them to find and spray out to the shooters that they have. Sam Hauser, Derek White, even though his percentages are down. Even Luka Garza's knocking down his threes. In terms of rebounding, they're 6th in offensive rebounding and 10th in total rebounding, which means the center tandem of Queta and Garza has kind of held up well. I wouldn't say it's the prettiest tandem you'll ever see in the world, but it definitely works out. They're not a bad duo together. Luka Garza started off really rough, but since then he's cleaned it up and he's looked like an actually playable player. And to back that up, they allow the 2nd lowest paint points per game. They block shots at the rim mainly because they have a really elite shot blocking guard to help somebody like Neemias Queta. Derek White is the best shot blocking guard in the NBA, and that definitely helps them. They allow the 3rd lowest opponent field goal percentage and the 5th lowest opponent rebounding rate. They are a very good defensive team, and like I said, they want to steer for you. They want to dictate the game for you. They want to play dredge ball. They want it to be slow. They want you to isolate more. They want you to isolate specifically on guys like Walsh or Hugo Gonzalez, the guys that can turn you over, the guys that can block shots. The bad part about the Celtics is it's the normal Missoula ball. They're very reliant on their threes. They're 28th in paint points per game. They don't get downhill and score a lot in the paint. Jaylen Brown, when he does get downhill, is typically a candidate for a pull-up mid-range more than he is a layup through contact. Even their guards are shorter guards that don't go to the rim very often. Anthony Simons is a very crafty rim scorer, but he's very jump shot reliant. Peyton Pritchard is almost exclusively jump shot reliant because once he gets in the paint, he kind of slithers out and takes that free throw line mid-range shot every time. It's beautiful, but at the same time, they don't get many dunks and layups. They have the 2nd lowest free throw rate in the league because, again, they shoot a lot of threes. They're a heavy jump shooting team. Peyton Pritchard's a jump shooter. Derek White's a jump shooter. These guys aren't the finish through contact type of guys, so they're going to shoot more jump shots than the average team. The biggest issue I have with my Boston Celtics is the fact that they are an awful second half team. In first quarter scoring, they rank 6th. In second quarter scoring, they rank 7th. In third quarter scoring, they go to 23rd, and then in fourth quarter scoring, they're 14th. They go from a top 10 offense in the first and second quarter down to a bottom half of the league offense in the third and fourth. They're also a middle of the pack defensive rebounding team, placing about 16th. They're not the best defensive rebounding team because their centers aren't really the most athletic guys, and their guards, they run a lot of 2-guard lineups, which doesn't help them with length on the perimeter. Those long rebounds really kill them because they're relying on Queta or Garza to grab it. Any long rebound is basically going to the offense. Like I said before, yes, they are over 500 against teams with a 500 record or above. They're only 13-12 though. I wouldn't paint that picture as spectacular. They're 4-5 in 3-point games and 9-13 in clutch games. This is a team that really struggles with shot creation down the stretch. It's a lot of Jaylen Brown down the stretch. You're going to get Jaylen Brown isolating a majority of the possessions to close the game for the Celtics, and they're just kind of hoping that they can draw 2 and get shooters open. If not, it's Jaylen Brown ISO the rest of the game. So again, it's another team where they have a unique style of play. It's very slow. They don't turn the ball over a ton, and they limit possessions. But at the same time, there's some real holes in their game. If their threes aren't falling, they're very beatable. If you can turn them over, they're very beatable. This team is the Celtics are just a very beatable team, just like the Pistons are. I don't know who's coming out of the East because of this. Move on, we can talk about the Knicks, which is another team where it's really hard to be optimistic right now. It really is. They are the reason why I made this video. They are, because they were the betting odds favorite like 2 weeks ago. And over the last 2 weeks, they're 2-9 over their last 11. 2-8 over their last 10, if you want to be more specific. Since December 20th, that's a full calendar month, they're 6-10. Over that last month, that also includes 2 4-game losing streaks. Good teams don't go on 4-game losing streaks very often. As a matter of fact, if you go on a 4-game losing streak in the playoffs, you know what happens? You go home. They're an elite team at home. I believe they're 16-6, but on the road, they dropped to 8-12. 8-12 on the road doesn't really paint a good picture either, and they're 11-13 against teams over 500. This is what I mean when I say it gets really hard to be optimistic about the Knicks right now. Since January 1st, they're shooting 43% from the field as a team that is bottom 3 in the NBA currently. Since January 1st, they're 27th in defensive rating. That's pretty atrocious. They're 18th in overall defensive rating this season, so they're a below average defensive team. Since January 1st, they're 25th in 3-point percentage. They are a very 3-point reliant team. Like they were, I don't think they were quite like this last year. I know it's Mike Brown. It's a completely different system. But they shoot a ton of threes this year, man. And I like to see it. They have some really good shooters. Mikhail, OG, and Cat all come to mind. Even Tyler Kolek is a good shooter. Speaking of Tyler Kolek, his development has really helped them a ton this season. And then the bringing in the addition of Jordan Clarkson and Gershon Yabusele, That was supposed to really solidify their bench. Instead, they're still 25th in bench scoring despite the additions and the step up from Kolek. It's really hard to be optimistic about the Knicks right now. I don't dislike the team, and you still kind of have to believe in the talent that they have. OG Anunoby, Karl-Anthony Towns, Jalen Brunson, of course, the head of the table, and then Mikal Bridges. Like, they have a lot of talent on this roster. They're still a really good rebounding team. They're still top 5 in offensive rebounding since January 1st. That's where they make a lot of their money, is the fact that they're bigger and they have Mitchell Robinson. I think the biggest sign of encouragement is the fact that I just think Karl-Anthony Towns has been the biggest reason why they've struggled, and you gotta believe in him to be able to snap out of this. Since January 1st, Cat is shooting 43 from the field and 32 from 3. Still rebounding well, averaging over 11 a game, don't get me wrong. You have to believe in Karl-Anthony Towns' ability to turn it around at some point, but also part of his issue is, I believe in their last 4 games, they've lost all 4, by the way, he's had 5 fouls in every single one. Every single game, 5 fouls. The guy can't keep himself out of foul trouble recently. Over that time, they missed Jalen Brunson for a little bit, so I get that. And I believe there's also been some other injuries on the roster, but overall, this is still a team that has the depth and the talent that should be able to win some games, even when Jalen Brunson's down. Instead, again, this season, like a repeat of last year, this team can be very hard to watch without Jalen Brunson on the floor. What they have been all season is a really good three-point shooting team and a really high rate of offensive rebounding team. They're a tough team down low. Their defense is below average. I think that's one thing that really worries me about them. Tibbs had them as a really decent defense this season. Again, 18th. That's almost in the bottom 10 for defensive rating. It's hard to trust a team in the playoffs that can't defend a soul. And now the last team I really want to talk about is the Toronto Raptors. The Toronto Raptors are a really weird team, but the one thing that they also are is a really good defensive team. They're 6th in defensive rating this season, 6th in opponent points per game this season, 3rd in fast break points allowed, so they don't allow a ton of transition points. They're 8th in paint points allowed, 6th in opponent three-point percentage allowed. In the fourth quarter, they have the 3rd best defense in the NBA, only allowing 26 points per game in the fourth quarter. There's a ton of encouraging signs about Toronto's defense. They are tough. They have a ton of great defenders, whether they go small or whether they go big ball. What's impressive to me about Toronto is the fact that they've managed to keep the 6th ranked defensive rating in the NBA, despite the fact that their backup center for a majority of the season has been Mamu. Of recently, it's been Colin Murray-Boyles more, which I think is going to make them even scarier, because he's a really good defender and he has a little bit more size than Mamu does. I love CMB a lot. I think they knocked it out of the park with that draft pick. They're top 6 in turnovers forced per game. They're a really tough defensive unit. If you think about it, all their best players are pretty good defenders. Scotty Barnes is an elite defender. I'm just going to say it. Scotty Barnes is an elite defender who should be on an all defensive team this year, no question in my mind. After that, Brandon Ingram, who has never been lauded or loved for his defense before, Gauded? Either way, he's putting up really decent defensive numbers. Like, he's an average defender at worst this season who has to carry the offense at times with tough shot making. When they go smaller and their small guards come in, whether that's Quickly or Shed or Walter or whatever. Walter's not really that small, but Shed is a really good defender. He's a bit of a pit bull build, you know what I mean? And then Jakob Poeltl's a good rim protector as well, a very underrated center in this league, I'll say. I mentioned that they're 6th in turnovers per game. That helps a ton because they are number 1 in fast break points. They have an elite defense that allows them to A, turn you over, or B, just force a miss, and then they get on the break very well. Really high in assists per game as well, I think because of the fact that they get out and transition a ton, and that's how they beat teams. Part of the issue is that, yes, I love Colin Murray-Boyles, but they still struggle with rebounding. They're 21st in total rebounding and allow the 7th most offensive rebounds per game. So they do struggle to close possessions at times. Another problem is the half-court offense late in games. They rank 24th in points per game, 30th in three-point percentage, 22nd in free throw percentage, and 15th in field goal percentage, which I guess is fine at middle of the pack. But they also rank 28th in fourth quarter scoring. So they have a problem late in games with the offense and getting buckets out of it. Yes, they can defend, and defense travels, and defense will keep you in a lot of games, but they do need to be able to score late, and I think it starts with the man at the top, or at least it should be. I know Brandon Ingram takes a ton of the late game tough shots, deservedly so, but the offense late game should still run through Scotty Barnes. I'm talking inside the last 5 minutes, you shouldn't have back-to-back possessions where Scotty doesn't touch the ball. He should be consistently with the ball. I mean, he might as well just hug the damn thing late in games because he's their best decision maker. He's also a very aggressive scorer when he needs to be, and he's a good passer. He's shown that he can play make at a good enough rate where Yes, you can keep a Jamal Shed out there, but you don't necessarily need it. I mentioned that they're like one of the lowest scoring teams in the league, and they don't shoot the three very well, and they don't really shoot free throws very well, but that defense travels, don't get me wrong, and the thing that they can hang their hat on that I really think gives them a shot at being looked at as a contender is the fact that they're 15-7 in clutch games. 15-7. That is a top 5 mark in the NBA. And like I said, it's mostly because their defense keeps them in every game. They're never really getting blown out because of the fact that they're holding the opposing team to way less than their season average. The issue is that if the pace is slowed up and you can halt the fast break points, their half-court offense may shoot them in the foot. But like I said, Brandon Ingram should be the last shot taker. Like if there's 10 seconds left and I need a bucket, I'll probably give it to Brandon Ingram over Scotty Barnes, don't get me wrong. But if there's 2 minutes left and I just need a good offensive possession, I'm giving the ball to Scotty Barnes 100 times out of 100. So yeah, I think the Raptors are contenders as well, and they can throw their hat in the ring and say that they deserve a little bit of love here. So I'll give them a little bit of love. A tough defense, a very rugged, tough defense with a fine enough offense that can really get the job done, but it needs to be better in the half court. And they also need to be better rebounding. Maybe that includes adding a center at the deadline. I will say all these teams are expected to be buyers at the deadline. The Detroit Pistons were looking into Michael Porter Jr. and some other guys like that. The Boston Celtics were looking into Daniel Gafford and other potential centers, like if it's a Zubats. The Knicks have been monitoring Giannis for the last 2 years. Whether that's going to happen or not, I don't really know. I think they should really make moves. The Knicks should be bigger buyers beyond Giannis. They shouldn't just be relying on Giannis to be available as their only trade option. They can still make roster moves around the edges. They're 25th in bench scoring. I'm sure they can address that a little bit. And then Toronto's been in the bidding for centers for a good little bit too. There was a thought that they would trade for Anthony Davis. They're in the Daniel Gafford sweepstakes. I had them trying to trade for Nick Claxton or Day'Ron Sharpe. They really need a backup big as well. All 4 of these teams have the ability to really change things around at mid-season and solidify themselves as a potential real threat to come out of the East. But I guess my overall point of this video is that every team in the East looks like they could win the East, but they all have very fatal flaws that show you at least 1 to 2, sometimes even 3 reasons why you really can't trust them to win this whole thing. Now I want to hear from you guys down below. Who do you think is coming out of the East? Detroit should be the #1 thought right now, but even they have some flaws in their game. Like I said, they only have a limited amount of playmakers and creators on the perimeter. They don't shoot the three-point ball very well, but they are an elite defensive team, and that really helps a ton. Do you think Boston will come out of it because they could still bring Jason Tatum back at the end of the season, and if they add a center, they're really in business? I don't know. I guess it really depends on what's going to happen at midseason and Jason Tatum's return date. Can the Knicks really turn it around and become the team that we all expected them to be? They were a betting odds favorite at the beginning of the season, and they've kind of fallen off a cliff over the last month. It really hasn't helped. Their defense is not that great, but they can still add a guy like Giannis potentially. If he asks out, he's never going to ask out, but if the Bucks decide that they want to move on from him, if the Knicks land Giannis, that flips their season right upside down. And then Toronto up north with their tough defense, if they had a backup center, everything else looks really good over there. I'm not exactly sure who was coming out of the East. Again, if we all had to bet, we'd probably pick the Pistons, but again, every team has their fatal flaw in the East right now. If you enjoyed this video, you should like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you all for joining me. I'm going to catch you game. See you guys in the next one.